I almost didn't take the train. A flight booked, a window seat, the whole thing sorted. But the storm that rolled into Toronto on a Thursday afternoon had other plans. By 5 o'clock, Pearson was a mess. Delays stacking on delays, the departures board, blinking like it was having a nervous breakdown. Someone at the Air Canada desk told me the earliest I'd get out was Saturday morning. It was Thursday. I had to be in Vancouver by Friday evening for my cousin's wedding rehearsal dinner, and showing up Saturday would mean missing it entirely. I did the thing you do when you're 31 and slightly stubborn and not ready to call your aunt and explain why you're going to be late to something that's been planned for 8 months. I got a taxi to Union Station and bought a ticket on the Canadian. If you've never taken Via Rail's Transcontinental, it's not what most people expect. It's not like a subway or a GO train. It's long and old and slow in a way that feels almost deliberate, like the train itself decided time was optional. The cars have that worn-in smell of industrial carpet and recycled air, and the windows are wide and slightly foggy at the edges, and once you get past the suburbs and into the Shield, there's this feeling that the rest of the world has been paused. I had a coach seat, because that's all that was left on short notice. I settled in somewhere around 6:30, tossed my backpack in the overhead, and pulled out my phone to text my cousin that I was on my way. He replied with 3 question marks, and then, when I explained, a string of emojis that I think were meant to be supportive. Beside me was empty when we pulled out of Union. I remember thinking that was lucky. I stretched my legs a little, put in one earbud, and watched the city dissolve into the outskirts into farmland, the farmland into the dark. A bear, she got on at Sudbury. It was Sudbury because I'd just woken up from a shallow half sleep when the train slowed, and I looked at my phone and it was a little past 11. I wasn't really paying attention. I had my head against the window, watching the platform lights slide past, when someone stopped in the aisle next to me and said quietly, "Sorry, I think that's my seat." I moved my bag. She sat down. I didn't look at her properly. I had that post-nap fog where everything feels mildly unreal, and I just put my earbud back in and closed my eyes again. Woke up because my shoulder was warm. That specific kind of warm that means something is resting against you. I opened my eyes slowly, the way you do when you're not sure what you're going to find, and found that the woman sitting next to me had fallen asleep with her head tilted sideways and her cheek pressed against my shoulder. Her hair was dark and slightly wavy, and smelled like something clean I couldn't name. Eucalyptus, maybe, or just a good shampoo. Or, I did not move. I want to be clear about why. It wasn't because I was enjoying the moment in some weird way. It was because she looked so completely at rest that the idea of jerking away felt like something a bad person would do. She had a book in her lap, one of those thick paperbacks with the creased spine that means someone actually reads and rereads, and her hands were folded loosely over it, and she was breathing slow and even, and I just thought, okay, this is fine. This is a train. Sleep on trains. Put my other earbud in and looked out the window. Ontario at midnight is not nothing. I don't know if you've seen it. The way the trees get dense and close, and the sky opens up between them in patches where you can see actual stars. Not the city version of stars where you get maybe 7 on a good night. Real ones. The kind that make you feel slightly small and slightly okay about it. Watching that, when she startled awake. The way people wake up in public. Suddenly, badly, with the full body twitch of someone who'd forgotten where they were. Her head came up fast, and she looked at my shoulder, and then at me, and then at my shoulder again, and the color that moved into her face happened quickly enough that I actually felt bad for her. "Odd," she said, not loudly, more like she was telling herself something terrible. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." It's fine," I said. I didn't realize I'd fallen. Honestly, it's fine. You were out for maybe 40 minutes. She pressed the back of her hand to her cheek like she was checking her own temperature. "That's so embarrassing." It's a night train," I said. "Everyone's asleep or trying to be. You're not the scandal you think you are." Laughed at that. Short and surprised, the kind of laugh that escapes before you decide to let it. It changed her face completely. I'm Simone," she said. Will," I said. She repeated it like she was confirmed something. "I'm sorry I used you as a pillow, Will." Put it on my tab," I said. "Right after the guy who spilled coffee on me at Pearson." Laughed again. Less surprised this time, and pulled her book out from under her hands and set it on the fold-down tray in front of her. I noticed the cover but couldn't read the title in the dimness. She seemed to notice me noticing. "Well, of Green Gables," she said. "Don't." Wasn't going to say anything. Gring, to say something. Well, I was going to ask if you'd read it before. 4 times, she said. It's comfort reading. I needed comfort reading tonight. Well, I didn't push on that. You don't push on things like that on a night train with a stranger. Or maybe you do, eventually, but not in the first 5 minutes. Talked instead about the usual things, where we were going. She was heading to Edmonton, not all the way to Vancouver like me. She'd transfer. She was a speech-language pathologist, she said, which I admitted I had to think about for a second before I knew what it meant. She worked mostly with kids, mostly in schools. She'd gone to U of A and then done her clinical hours in Sudbury, which is why she was getting on at Sudbury at 11 at night rather than somewhere more convenient. I told her I was a project manager for a construction company, that I was going to my cousin's wedding, that I'd been living in Toronto for 4 years after growing up in Kingston, and that I genuinely had not expected to be on a train when I woke up this morning. Well, the storm, she said. Full storm. I agreed. It was a moment then where the train went over a bridge. I could feel the slight change in sound, the hollow knock of it, and we both looked out the window at the same time. There was a river below us, silver and wide, and the moon was just coming out from behind a cloud. Well, okay, Simone said quietly. That's worth missing a flight for. I thought so too. Walked for another hour maybe. The car had gone quiet around us. Someone a few rows back was snoring in a dedicated, committed way that I respected. The lights had dimmed. It felt like a different kind of time, the kind that exists between places, between obligations, where you're technically in transit, and therefore briefly excused from being whoever you're supposed to be when you arrive. Told me about her job without the usual performance people do when they're explaining their careers. She just talked about the kids she worked with, a 7-year-old boy who'd refused to speak at school for 8 months, and then one day said a full sentence to her and only her, and how she'd had to go to the bathroom afterward to cry. A teenage girl with a stutter who'd asked Simone to help her practice a speech for her school council election. She won, Simone said. By a lot. Oh, you clearly love it, I said. Pause. Not everything about it. There's a lot of paperwork, and funding issues, and parents who don't understand what I actually do and think I'm just doing crafts with their kids. She said this without bitterness, just factually, but the actual work. Yeah, I love the actual work. I told her the honest version of my job too, that most of it was emails and spreadsheets, and keeping 5 different people from blaming each other when a deadline slipped. That the part I actually liked was being on site, watching something get built. That there was something in seeing the framing go up that I never got tired of, even after years. Olbe, she said, that makes sense for you, actually. I asked what she meant. Like a person who likes things to be concrete, she said. Literal. Like you want to know what something is, not just what it's supposed to be. Thought about that for a while. That's maybe the most accurate thing someone said to me in a long time. I work with kids. I've gotten good at reading how people communicate. Should I be nervous? Probably not, she said. You're pretty readable. What to say to that, so I didn't say anything, and she looked out the window, and it wasn't awkward. That was the strange part. The silences weren't awkward. They had the texture of silences between people who've known each other longer than a few hours. I fell asleep again, somewhere past White River. Up it was almost 4 in the morning, and the seat beside me was empty. Her coat was gone. Her book was gone. For a second, I had that specific irrational disappointment of realizing you fell asleep at the wrong moment. Like maybe she'd said something, or I'd missed something, or the conversation had just ended without an ending. Altman, and then I felt it. Bartle. In my jacket pocket. The breast pocket, the inside one, the one I hadn't opened since I'd packed. There was something in it that hadn't been there before. I reached in and pulled it out carefully. A page torn from the back of her book. Not a page with text, the blank end paper at the back, the kind with just a little ghosting of the book's pattern. She'd written something on it in small slanted handwriting. All easy to sleep next to, Will. S. All that, a phone number, an Edmonton area code. Hold the paper for a long time, looking at it, and the train moved through the dark. All I want to be honest about. I'm not someone who calls. It's just a pattern I'd developed over the years, especially the last 2. I had a relationship end at 29. We'd been together 3 years. We'd lived together for one, and when it was done in the messy, drawn-out way where you both know it's over for 6 months before anyone says so. I came out of that with the general conviction that I was bad at reading situations and worse, at acting on them. Lord said I was overthinking it. My mother said I just needed time. I said I was fine, and then spent the better part of 18 months being fine in a very controlled, deliberate way that involved a lot of solo weekend hikes and not giving anyone my pocket to leave notes in. So when I got off the train in Winnipeg to stretch and get coffee, because the Canadian stops, it stops often, it has opinions about stopping, I stood on the platform in the early morning cold and looked at the number on that piece of paper and had an entire argument with myself. It went like this. She got on at Sudbury, and she's heading to Edmonton, and you're going to Vancouver, and you have a wedding to get to, and you don't know this person, and she was probably just being friendly, and calling would make it weird, and she might not even remember exactly what she wrote. And my phone rang. It was my cousin Tyler. 6:30 in the morning, which was very Tyler. Are you actually on a train right now? He said. I'm actually on a train right now. That's the most Will thing you've ever done. No choice. The flight? No. Aunt Susan called my mom. She's very worried. She thinks trains are dangerous. Aunt Susan watches too much American news. Tyler agreed cheerfully. Are you going to make it? I'll be in Vancouver by tomorrow afternoon. Also, dinner's at 7. You have time. Don't be weird about it. Just get here. I'm not being weird about it. A train will. You're a little bit being weird about it. I hung up. I got back on and found my seat and looked at the note again and texted the number before I could have any more arguments with myself. This is Will from the train. I have very good shoulder posture if you need a reference. Phone face down and looked out the window at the flat, wide, impossible expanse of the prairies coming up, the sky going pale at the edges, and waited. Texted back 20 minutes later. I charge by the hour now. Billing address? On and off for most of the day. Nothing heavy. Nothing that required a decision about anything. She sent me a photo of the dining car menu with the caption that says, regional cuisine, but I don't know which region, and I sent back a photo of a prairie sky that had gone completely pink and gold and said, this region. She sent a voice note at some point. I don't know why. Maybe her hands were full, and I was not prepared for what her actual voice sounded like coming through a phone speaker. A little lower than it had been on the train, more relaxed, laughing at her own joke before she'd finished making it. I replayed it once. Okay, twice. I was somewhere in Saskatchewan when she told me about why she'd needed comfort reading. She didn't announce it. It came out in the middle of a longer text, almost in parentheses. She'd been visiting her family in Sudbury, she wrote, which should have been simple, but wasn't because her older brother Wade had spent the past year making her feel guilty for moving to Edmonton in the first place. He had a whole system for it. The pointed questions about when she was coming back. The implication, never stated directly, that leaving had been a kind of abandonment. Lawrence's ear, in a way that she didn't. And he used it. And the visit had been 3 days of sitting at a dinner table, while Wade made her feel like a person who had done something wrong by building a life she wanted. He didn't say anything outright, she wrote. That would be too easy to push back on. He just has this way of framing things where you leave every conversation feeling like you should apologize for something and you're not even sure what. I read that a few times. Back. Does he do this a lot? Every visit, she said. I don't know why I keep expecting it to be different. Because you love him, I wrote. And people who love someone keep believing that person is capable of doing better. Why for a few minutes. Then, that was unexpectedly wise for someone on a train in Saskatchewan. I have a lot of time to think out here. Into fair. He told my parents I left because I thought I was better than them. He didn't say it to me, obviously. He said it to them, and then my mom brought it up at breakfast like she was just mentioning it. I've been a speech pathologist for 6 years. I moved for a job that doubled my salary and gave me a caseload I actually wanted. I didn't leave because I thought I was better than anyone. I left because staying was making me smaller. Looked at that message for a long time. Staying was making me smaller. I knew what that felt like. Maybe not in the same way, but the general shape of it, the way certain environments and certain people can work on you slowly until you're operating at a version of yourself you don't entirely recognize. Right call, I wrote. Even if he never says so. She said. He's not built for that. Then you have to be done needing it from him. Pause. Longer this time. Working on it, she wrote. Orchard in Winnipeg. Her connection to Edmonton was a different line, a shorter trip, and she had about an hour on the platform before it boarded. She texted me when she got off. Your train is pulling out. I can see it from here. You didn't wave. I didn't know which window you were at. I was the one waving at all of them. I laughed out loud in my seat, which got a look from the man across the aisle. We kept texting while her connection boarded. She sent me a photo of the Winnipeg station ceiling, which is genuinely beautiful. All these old arched beams. And I told her it looked like a church. She said everything important looks like a church. If you're in the right mood. I said I was going to think about that for the rest of the day. She said, good, you have time. Or she got on her train, she called me. I wasn't expecting it. My phone buzzed and showed her name. I'd saved it by then, Simone Train, and I answered and she said, I just wanted to say it was really nice talking to you. You could have texted that. She said. I wanted to say it. There was the ambient sound of a train station behind her. Announcements, footsteps, that particular echo of large enclosed spaces, and I had this very clear, odd feeling of the distance between us being both very small and very large at the same time. It was really nice talking to you too, I said. Vancouver's not that far from Edmonton. Not, I agreed. About an hour and a half by plane. Planes are good. I've heard. I said, when there are no storms. She laughed. I'm boarding, she said. Text me when you get there? I said. I will. Ol's rehearsal dinner was at a restaurant in Yaletown, one of those places with exposed brick and a prix-fixe menu and candles that were clearly meant to justify the price point. Tyler met me at the door and hugged me for longer than was strictly necessary and said, I can't believe you actually took a train. And I said I had no choice, and he said, sure. It was easy. The kind of family gathering that hums along on shared history and mild teasing and good wine. His fiancée, Bridget, made a speech that made Tyler cry, which nobody let him live down. His parents were trying very hard. My aunt kept asking me when I was going to settle down, which is a sentence she has been saying to me since approximately my mid-20s and which I have developed a very smooth response to. I texted Simone from the bathroom at 10 o'clock. Made it. Cousin cried at the rehearsal dinner and is now claiming something got in his eye. Replied almost instantly. What was it? His own feelings, I typed. He's very bad at them. Or runs in the family? Looked at that for a second. Getting better, I wrote. The wedding was the next day. It was exactly what a wedding should be. A little chaotic, a little emotional, the vows slightly too long in the best way. Tyler looked at Bridget the way you look at something you'd been afraid you might lose. The ceremony was at a venue out in Langley, and afterward we spilled out onto the grass in the late afternoon light with our glasses, and I stood there looking at the mountains in the distance with the particular feeling of being exactly where you're supposed to be. I took a photo and sent it to Simone without a caption. Okay, that's worth a storm. We talked every day after that. It wasn't something we discussed or agreed to. It just happened the way things happen when two people have found a frequency they didn't know they were looking for. She'd text in the morning, something small, something she saw on her way to work, a kid's sentence that made her laugh, and I'd respond from my desk or from a site visit, and by the time I got home in the evenings, there was always something to say. I flew to Edmonton in October. I want to be honest about how nervous I was. I'd driven through Edmonton once, years ago, and I'd seen photos, but mostly I just knew it as the city on the other end of her phone. The flight was 55 minutes, and I spent 40 of them looking out the window at the clouds and running through the various ways the evening could go. Walt met me at arrivals. She was wearing a dark green jacket, and her hair was different, down instead of the loose braid she'd had on the train, and she looked like someone I already knew, which I did, and also like someone I was meeting for the first time, which I also was. It was a strange overlap. Exact like you do on FaceTime, she said, which made me laugh because it was the most ordinary possible thing to say. Do you? I said. Anticlimactic. For you, extremely. We went for dinner at a place on White Ave that she'd been talking about for 2 months. Some small Taiwanese spot with maybe 20 seats and a line out the door. We waited in the cold, which in Edmonton in October is not nothing, and talked with our hands in our pockets. And by the time we sat down, the cold had worn off, and the restaurant was loud and warm, and we ordered too much and ate most of it. Told me about a new student she'd just started working with, a little girl who'd had a stroke at age 4 and was relearning how to form certain sounds. She's the most determined person I've ever met, Simone said. She's 6. She's 6 years old, and she works harder in our sessions than most adults work at anything. Also, she has a good teacher, I said. Holt looked at me over her water glass. You can't just say that. Holtmer's handle, I just did. Alway, you don't know that. Know what you've told me, I said, and I know what I can see. All ate for a moment. Not uncomfortable quiet, the other kind. Called last week, she said. First time he's called in about 2 months. He wanted to know if I'd be home for Christmas. What did you say? Olwed, I said I hadn't decided yet. She set her glass down, which is true, but also not the whole truth. The whole truth is that I've been trying to figure out how to go home without letting him make me feel like I have to justify my whole life to him. Olway, have you figured it out? She said. I think the thing I keep forgetting is that I'm allowed to love someone and also not accept how they treat me. Like those aren't mutually exclusive. You can love someone and still say, this behavior has a cost, and I'm done paying it. Ol looked at her across the small table. The restaurant was loud around us and the food was getting cold, and I thought about the note in her handwriting that I still had in my jacket pocket. I'd put it in every jacket since the train, moving it from one to the next without entirely deciding to. And I thought about the river we'd passed over at midnight and the stars and the snoring man and everything that had happened since then. Old, that's maybe the wisest thing I've heard in a long time, I said. Old, I've been working on it, she said. I said, I was there. She smiled at that. Not the surprised laugh from the train, not the quick deflection, just a real quiet smile, the kind that doesn't need anything added to it. On the walk back to her neighborhood, after dinner, she reached over and took my hand. Not dramatically, just reached over and took it, the way you do when the decision already been made and you're just catching up to it. Edmonton night was cold and clear, and you could see the river valley below us from where we were walking, the lights of the North Saskatchewan running long and silver in the dark. Older hand, and I thought, I almost didn't take the train. Endel, I still have that piece of paper. Old jacket right now. Not the same jacket I was wearing on the train, but I've moved it every time since, from pocket to pocket, the way you carry something without admitting to yourself that you're carrying it. The handwriting is getting soft at the fold lines. I should probably put it somewhere safer. I probably won't. About the version of that night where I made different choices. Where I stayed rigid when Simone's head fell against my shoulder and shifted away, or where I didn't text the number, or where I talked myself out of Edmonton in October the way I'd been talking myself out of things for 2 years. That version of me existed. I was pretty close to being him. All to understand. Slowly, the way you understand things that matter is that the choices that changed everything weren't dramatic. I didn't do anything brave. I just didn't move when I could have. I just sent a text before I finished arguing myself out of it. Those were small acts, almost accidental, but they were honest ones. And I think honesty is the thing that actually compounds over time, not grand gestures, not big declarations, or the small, repeated choice to not pretend you feel less than you do. Old taught me something about that without meaning to. When she told me about Wade, about the years of quiet pressure, the dinners where she left feeling like she owed someone an apology she hadn't earned. What struck me wasn't the difficulty of it. It was her clarity about it. She'd done the hard work of separating love from acceptance of harm. She understood that you can hold both things. I love this person, and this behavior costs me something I'm not willing to keep paying. Well, that's not coldness. That's actually a form of respect for yourself and in some strange way, for the other person too. Because pretending something is fine when it isn't doesn't protect anyone. It just delays the reckoning. Sort of thinking takes a real sharpness. Not the sharpness of being guarded or closed off. She wasn't either of those things. But the sharpness of someone who has looked at a situation clearly and refused to let wishful thinking blur the edges. I admire that more than I knew how to say at the time. Well, and then there's the part of the story I think about most, which is that she got on a night train alone after a hard visit, and she was reading Anne of Green Gables for the 4th time because she needed something that felt safe, And she fell asleep on a stranger, and when she woke up embarrassed, she didn't retreat. She introduced herself. She kept going. That takes something, not toughness exactly, more like a willingness to stay present, even when you'd rather disappear. Alma learned that from her ever since. Almost didn't take the train. And I think that's the part I'll never fully get over. Not in a bad way, just in the way that certain things stay with you as evidence that your life can turn on something as small as a canceled flight and a coach seat and the decision to not move when someone needs somewhere to rest. Or, North Saskatchewan was silver and cold the night we walked along it. And she was holding my hand, and I thought, okay, so this is what it looks like when you stop getting in your own way.